Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only, Mighty the Armadillo here.
And I am Ray the Flying Squirrel, and we are back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos.
And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of newer Super Mario Bros. DS,
a ROM hack of new Super Mario Bros. For the Nintendo DS.
So, last time, we somehow managed able to explore into World 4, which does manage to take place in Pumpkin Boneyard, and overall, we actually did that world pretty good, even though despite the fact that we do die occasionally for that, you know, once again hesitation, but apart from those aside things though, we did manage to able to get every single star coins there, and on top of all that stuff though, we also did manage to deal with the forms of this unexpected boss in that world, and that's what appears to be none other than Dry Bowser, because Dry Bowser was originally going to be World 8 boss fight, but actually as it turns out that Dry Bowser now appears early on in that particular ROM hack. So yeah, kind of interesting all things considered, you know? So anyways though, today for this video is that we are about to be heading over into World 5, which does manage to take place in Moonview Glacier. So because of that, much like the forms of how it does it on the vanilla version of New Super Mario Bros. On the DS, basically though is about the fact that it does manage to take place in a snowy environment. So nothing new or anything, apart from the fact that the biggest difference is this time, if you couldn't tell already, that the time of the day is actually nighttime as opposed to the usual daytime. So, kind of interesting all things considered. So because of that, yeah, it's my turn to start things off in the forms of the first level in Moonview Glacier. So because of that though, that's to be expected, much like the forms of how it does on the regular New Super Mario Bros. On DS, we need to try to deal with the forms of those snow spikes here and there, because obviously though, these are the only enemies they do manage to toss snowballs at us. So, and also as far as I'm aware, the background music you're going to be hearing is actually based off Cool Cool Mountain from Super Mario 64, or technically speaking though, also say applies with Snowman's Land as well. Because of that though, is about the fact you probably get the idea about the forms that familiar music from, you know, Super Mario 64, in addition to Super Mario 64 DS as well. So yeah, you get the gist of it for this point, Mighty. So, anyways, though. So, yeah, a few things we want to talk about this is, though, and that's what appears to be for the fact that, well, today's day, of course, there is the, what day is it today? I keep on forgetting. Today's day was the 9th of August today, in some cases in 2025 today. Oh, yeah, thank you for that point, bro. Anyway, yeah, some interesting news has been brought up. Since embodied forms have been yesterday, is that, as you probably already know, about the fact that Maxi is now onto the final board in Super Mario Party Jamboree, to be more specifically in a regular Mario Party mode. I mean, as a result though, it's about the fact that he's now going to be moving on into King Bowser's Keep, but as a result, he'll try to save that board up, join at some point until on next Monday, because after he's pretty much done with the forms of that particular board, as far as I'm aware, that basically does about the fact that yes indeed we did somehow already set up the actual poll voting system, and it seems to be more specifically than that, it's about the fact that we actually got ourselves, let's just say, 6 votes so far. So as a result though, it's about the fact that the entire deadline is going to be expired. Well, to be more accurate though, the actual poll voting system for Pro Rolls will about to expire until, to be more specifically, at some point on next Wednesday. Before that time comes, that Maxi will also try to show off one of those features for the likes of in Pro Rolls, and say applies with the forms of the other 2 rule sets on Switch 2 version specifically, but that particular discussion can wait and during at a later time. So anyway, so now it's my turn now to do, let's just say, World 5-2, to obviously not only trying to find the normal exit, but in addition to finding the secret exit as well. So because of that, so yeah, and it's also worth noting for is about the fact for this particular world right there, also decided able to actually bring some snowy pokies. So, and also there's the first star coin at the very beginning of the level, which obviously though, much like the forms of how it does it on New Super Luigi U, obviously though sometimes that some star coins appears way earlier on in the level, so yeah, keep your eyes peeled out for it, especially because considering about the fact you might not know if you might accidentally miss something. So chances out though, it's a good thing I did manage to check on that early on. So
But anyway,
so, in terms of the forms of news, discussions alike, in terms of the forms of the most recent events has been going on, basically those about the fact that we actually gotta get ourselves a brand new track is gonna be revealed for the sake of the forms of Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, and that's what appears to be one of those familiar stages based off from Sonic Colors, which appears to be Sweet Mountain. So yeah, that's actually quite interesting, all things considered. So, although we're not entirely sure what the world itself is going to be, or the entire racetrack is going to be called exactly, but I'm sure enough though is about the fact that we'll find out more about it while the actual game finally launches. Especially noticeable thanks to the forms of one of those similar situations as the forms of one of those let's just say X/Twitter kind of like discussion or broadcast moments for some Sonic titles as far as I'm aware. I mean, mind you though, it has been quite a while since we've last mentioned something related to Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, and even mentioned about the forms of Sonic the Hedgehog alike, so... But anyway, so yeah, that's actually quite interesting about the fact that not only did we get ourselves our first look of the forms of the Sweet Mountain racetrack, but also with the forms of Chow Park as well. So yeah, everything else checks out there basically. And similarly though, it's about the fact I also did manage to find out that indeed, speaking of which, in terms of the forms of Sonic the Hedgehog related, apparently though, that Minecraft is actually getting a super update for specifically with Sonic the Hedgehog add-on, which means about the fact that not only does Super Sonic will become playable, but in addition to Super Shadow as well. So because of that though, suffice to say though, is about the fact I'm pretty sure we do need to get all 7 Chaos Emeralds as we expect at this point, in order to be able to actually access to play as, well, not only Super Sonic, but in addition to Super Shadow as well. So because of that though, here's a nice little update to have, especially considering about the fact that I'm not entirely sure if that particular add-on has already came out recently or something like that. I mean, mind you though, we haven't paid attention to the forms of that much in terms of Minecraft news updates lately, but that's just mainly because at that point in time, for the fact that I get the strong sense of feeling, actually though, is about the fact that, oh jeez, it's gonna be, dang it, I hit the ceiling! Dang it. But at the very least though, I got the checkpoint, so I don't have to worry about this too much, at least not for right now either way, when it comes to like, you know, do or die situations sometimes, but even then, I'm guessing using Luigi for that particular third and final star coin might give me a huge disadvantage because of all that, well, his high jump and all that, which means I might accidentally hit the ceiling very easily. But as you can definitely see on screen, that if you did manage to able to use the fire flower with the forms those snowy pokies, that way is actually way more effective, unlike the forms of how it does it for the Hammer Bros suit, that basically though it just does absolutely nothing in terms of trying to deal with the forms those snowy pokies. So yeah, that's one way to put it. There we go, I somehow no longer hit the ceiling, so that's all fun and dandy and everything, so it's time for me to be able to blast off thanks to the forms of that particular pipe, so... But yeah, for the most part though, it's about the fact that we're doing this world pretty well so far. Although, I wouldn't spoke too soon on this point just yet, because obviously though, now, as far as I'm aware, about the fact that if we do manage to be able to completely done, in terms of the forms of World 5, as far as I'm aware, that, actually, we'll explain more about that if we somehow manage to be able to continue proceedings for this, because it's now your turn, Mighty, to do the tower level. So in some cases though, yeah, this is going to be quite interesting for this stage right there. Yeah, because not only for the fact that we still need to able to try to utilize with the ice physics sometimes, but as well as that though is about the fact that there's going to be a lot of, you know, situations like, you know, for instance, in this level right here, that basically though we need to use these bombs in order able to actually make them explode, and that way we have to let them try to able to blow up one of those ice blocks, because otherwise, yeah, and as you can definitely tell for the fact that we're going to be doing the exact same technique as the forms. Remember with the forms of that particular game of Mario Bros. For not only for the arcade machines, but in addition to the NES as well. Yeah, basically though is about the fact that we need to use that particular, jumping onto that particular, well, it's hard for me to explain personally, because, well, if you couldn't tell already, it's been about
6 days ago, since we've last played this particular ROM hack so far, because, well, obviously though, like I said before, that Maxie is getting very close towards the end of the Mario Party mode in Super Mario Party Jamboree before he decides to tackle through some extra side modes. So, this also includes with the forms of 2 rule sets that are only exclusive to Switch 2. Yeah, I think you probably get the gist of it for this point, Mighty, because even then though, he already talks about that earlier, so...
Oh jeez, that was close.
Yeah, because I get the feeling is about the fact that similar to the forms of how it does in one of those levels in New Super Mario Bros. Wii, for instance, that sometimes though you always have to rely on trying to grab the Bob Bomb all the way to that breakable wall, and then that way you would be able to actually try to come across into not only some star coins potentially, but also with certain secrets you know as well. So because of that though, yeah, it kind of reminds me of that particular stage as you pointed things out earlier. So, however, thankfully though, we don't need to rely on motion controls or anything else like that to, you know, try to elevate ourselves with the forms of that particular platform left, and in addition to the forms of how finicky the directions can be sometimes. Although, as far as I'm aware though, is about the fact that, oh, there might be something over towards like the left here, which I've noticed right from the start, because as far as I'm aware, not only does it take me onto the outside portion of the tower strangely, but also, get this, the 3rd and the final star coin, so how about that? Yeah, pretty top notch for the actual specific skills you did somehow performed right there. So now I can able to take on Bowser Jr. again. So, and conveniently enough though, this will be the last time we get able to try to deal with him with the normal, you know, simple easy pattern. But now that the Bob Bombs are raining downwards. So because of that though, this what makes the entire boss battle like this can be pretty tough sometimes. But either way, I'm sure that Mighty has got this no problem, so...
I mean, you should say, for the fact that thanks to those Bob Bombs, they've managed to help me out throughout the entire battle while trying to deal with the forms of ice physics, you know?
Oh yeah, because like I said earlier, that these Bob Bombs are constantly raining down throughout the entire battle, so I guess that's something, so...
Thus, I did somehow manage to let the item house somehow pop up at the very beginning of the map, so that's always swell. And let me unlock the secret level for us, but then again, we'll do these secret stages for later. So for now, it's your turn, Ray, on to World 5-3. So, yeah, this is going to be quite interesting for me to say for this point. So, but anyway, the next thing we want to talk about this is, though, and that, conveniently enough, though, is about the fact that we actually got ourselves the forms of some more Mario items, or to be more specifically than that Nintendo has just announced that My Mario, a series of Mario-themed products for young children, has already been confirmed. Well, usually at the moment right now, it's gonna be only coming into Japan at the moment, so suffice to say though, is about the fact that it's filled to the brim with a lot of Mario merchandise, but in toddler form. So because of that though, yeah, you get stuff like the forms of, let's just say, well, we'll explain more details about the forms of some merchandise in a second, because even then though, as far as I'm aware, that the majority of the My Mario series of projects merchandise, specifically in Japan, is going to be starting until specifically the 26th of August in 2025. So as a result, the first wave will be available at Tokyo Nintendo at, well, you get the idea for this point. So, well, it wasn't until we've realized about the fact that the majority of the forms of those My Mario products will also be released on other countries until at some point in 2026. So this means about the fact that we might have to wait for a little longer until when, you know, the rest of the world were able to actually get merchandise like that. So, yeah, because like you said earlier, it's about the fact that Japan were able to actually receive a whole bunch of those merchandise based off from the likes of the toddler, small children, for the sake of the forms of My Mario collection, for the sake of the forms of, well, you get the idea for this point. So you get stuff like, some bunch of toys here and there, such as, for instance, there's the stackable Mario-themed blocks, and conveniently enough, Amiibo was compatible for some reason, which, that honestly caught me off guard, especially considering about the fact that I'm almost assuming
that amiibos will be done for now, but thanks to the forms of that particular existence of, you know, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Donkey Kong and Pauline amiibo, this means about the fact that the entire amiibo lineup is not gonna give up, which I'm generally surprised though, honestly, because considering about the fact that, well, obviously though, amiibos has actually gone pretty successful ever since in 2014, thanks to the forms of to go alongside with the release of Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U, basically. So, yeah, I think you get the picture for this point there, Mighty, and thus you're now on to the third Ghost House level, and suffice to say though, is about the fact that I get the feeling that when it comes to the secret exit, as far as I'm aware, it's going to be quite interesting with this stage, because even then though, I'm pretty sure you're going to be focusing on the normal exit first, because, well, generally speaking though, we're probably not going to mention about this right about now, so, anyway, there's also with the forms of, some soft washable plush toys and rattles so that the babies can able to actually play around with the forms of some cool Mario merchandise here and there, such as the forms of a mushroom rattle, as well as the forms of the question mark block rattle thing. And of course, not to mention though, is about the fact that there's also a pop-up picture book with moving facial expressions, which is very interesting. And in addition to that, there's also hoodies, romps, backpacks, tableware, and more. So yeah, these are all basically just, well, preschool stuff, basically. In fact, it's been a very long time since when Mario did something related to the forms of preschool stuff, since back in the 90s with the forms of some Super Nintendo games. Well, only in America though, because generally speaking, it was about the fact that when it comes to some Super Nintendo games, that they somehow managed to able to get themselves some early, well, let's just say, for instance, though, with Mario's early years games for the Super Nintendo, both of which are, well, fun with letters, and fun with numbers, and preschool fun. So because of that, despite we're probably not going to talk about that, because I've heard so many horror stories with that particular educational kind of games like that, because no wonder why that those games never came out in the UK, but that's just mainly because no matter what though, that we pretty much used to with genuine products made by Nintendo, of course. So yeah, I think you get the gist of it for this point, so... But anyways, as you can see, though, I have to able to activate all of those little switches right there in order to able to actually try to activate those little staircases and stuff like that. So, and I have no idea how do I supposed to able to go for that particular door over there, which I might try to figure this out though, because, well, straight to the point, oh jeez, I totally forgot about that particular blocks of staircases almost gonna be breaking apart, but thankfully though I did manage to gather some more coins to able to actually hopefully try to reach our maximum amount of extra lives as much as we can. So anyway, so now we can able to actually access to World 5-4, but of course, like what Mighty has already established that earlier, he needs to go back into the stage for not only trying to find the method to try to able to actually get himself the third and the final star coin, but in addition to that, the secret exit. So but anyway, the next thing they did bring up, in terms of the forms of my Mario merchandise kind of thing, for toddlers specifically, the next thing they did bring, which appears to be a very unexpected Mario app that's fully playable or playful interactions on phones, along with tablets, and, strangest one of them all though, Nintendo Switch, / technically Nintendo Switch 2, because of backwards compatibility, so, yeah, I guess that's pretty much obvious for the sake of time.
What the heck is he doing here?
Oh, we actually got ourselves a King Boo boss battle. Well, it's not so much as a boss fight, but it's more accurately a chase, basically. Although, the only difficult thing about this section right here is that this thing is so hard to see, especially noticeable it's in the dark, which is understandable because we still need forms within a ghost house, basically. And all that at the same time, though, I do need to try to avoid as many of those enemies as I could, like these boos, and in addition to jack-o'-lantern enemies and all that stuff. Well, I would have liked able to actually save my Hammer Bros suit as much as I wanted to, but yeah, I'm basically stuck with the forms of the actual Fire Mario as it is, so But yeah, for the most part though, if you accidentally died, then you have to restart the entire section again. Although thankfully though, there's a checkpoint, so well, at least the checkpoints are very generous with this ROM hack either way. Also, I'm almost going to be dying, so I need to get that fire flower out immediately, just in case I don't, you know, start all over again, which thankfully that's not. Oh, jeez. Come on, you're almost there. Because, as far as I'm aware, there's a switch here, which means if I activate the switch, the light is brought back, and King Boo has been vanquished. So, yeah, it seems pretty interesting way to able to have the secret exit like that. And as a result, this will pretty much lead us to the final canon in the entire ROM hack, slash, you know, the vanilla version of New Super Mario Bros. On the DS, basically. So, but now I need to go back in here for the final time to try to figure out how do I suppose able to get that third and final star coin to begin with, so. Yeah, anyway. And also they did say for the fact that the short animations is coming onto Nintendo's site and YouTube, which, as far as I'm aware, I'm very curious to check those out. Well, usually, relatively speaking, I was about the fact that it's not going to be until a later time, at least as far as I'm aware of. So, what's even more interesting is about the fact that with that particular a Mario app for playful interactions on phones, tablets, and Switch, and technically Switch 2 for its backwards compatibility, suffice to say though, it may look like it's going to be quite similar to the forms of how it does it for, let's just say, that you mess around with not only Mario's face, but in addition to Yoshi's face as well, within Super Mario 64 DS, for example. Although the biggest difference is this time is about the fact that you can now only use your finger or a thumb, depending on your hand size or something like that. Well, mind you though, mighty, it's only for like, you know, toddler levels as far as anything else as far as you might able to think about. So, yeah, I guess that's about it basically. Although we would have expected able to actually see, you know, the 40th anniversary of the Super Mario Bros. Franchise, but it's a bit too early at this point. I mean, after all though, we're still in August after all, so oh, and by the way, something's worth noting, for the actual app of the actual Mario game I was on about, that game is going to be officially titled Hello Mario, which allows kids to interact with Mario's face. So, yeah, I guess that's about it basically. So, anyway though, and the next thing we want to discuss upon, and that's what appears to be for the fact that one of those, Switch 2 games is going to be on its way onto Nintendo Switch 2. That is what appears to be the Switch 2 edition of the Exit 8. So, yeah, got nothing else to say about this, I guess. Although, mind you though, it's already been confirmed the release date for it, and that's going to be due out at some point towards at the very end of August, specifically the 29th of August in 2025. So, I guess there's nothing else I can really say about that particular game, I guess. That's coming onto Nintendo Switch 2, as in the Switch 2 edition, so. But either way, that's as far as I can try to say about that. Although, the only thing it does bother me for recent days, as far as I'm aware, that unfortunately though, I get the horrible feeling for the fact that the Fast 10 Part 2 is once again gonna be delayed, and hopefully for the final time, I'm assuming so anyway. And because of that though, that film in particular, Fast 10 Part 2, the sequel to Fast 10, or Fast X to be more specifically, that is now going to be pushed back until the release on 2027. So, yeah, I guess that's going to be kind of a similar situation as the films of Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, basically. Although, what's even more convenient than that is that I get the feeling with 2027 it's going to be huge for us. Well, not only in terms of the films of that particular, well, certain special celebration as far as I'm aware in the near distant future, but as well as that though is about the fact that a multitude of films are already going to be releasing on 2027, such as, well, for instance though, the Angry Birds movie 3, and in addition to Sonic the Hedgehog 4 movie, the Legend of Zelda movie, and also, as you mentioned this earlier, Ray, is of course Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, and now Fast 10 Part 2. So because of that though, yeah, it's gonna be all over the place in regards to the films' unexpected film delays in the near future, in regards to the films it was originally going to be releasing during at some point in 2026, along the same year as the films of the second Mario movie is going to be on its way. So, yeah, it seems gone all over the place as far as, you know, film delays and all that stuff though, which it obviously tends to happen sometimes with all that, well, certain events that's been going on in terms of actors and actress especially, so, but yeah, you can get the idea for that point, so... Also, I just realized that particular stage is a piece of cake for my part, so I totally appreciate about that. So now, let's go ahead and move on to some secret stages, starting with, of course, World 5-A, but before I do that, I need to save the game, thanks to the fonts that glorious star coin sign I need to get rid of, so just in case we can able to actually access to any other, like, you know, signs to able to purchase for, so, in fact, conveniently enough, though, is about the fact I'm pretty sure we've actually at the halfway point, in terms of collecting those star coins in this ROM hack, I'm pretty sure. Well, either way, though, don't get your hopes up at this point just yet. So, oh boy, an auto-scrolling stage, which, as a result, is pretty, you know, fully expected at this point, just like the forms of how it does on the vanilla version of New Super Mario Bros. On DS, that in one of the stages in particular, in World 5-A, that we have to utilize with that elevation mushroom platform, so at least that's as far as I'm aware of, basically, so, and as far as I get the horrible feeling for the fact that with this particular stage in mind, I get the horrible feeling there aren't any checkpoints, so we have to do this in one run. So far you're actually doing pretty well so far. I mean, so far you actually got 2 of those star coins, but you need to get the third and final one. And I'm pretty sure for the fact that to get the third and final star coin, we have to rely on a certain enemy as far as I'm aware, which appears to be the Snow Spike as far as I'm aware, because once you're able to actually realize that he decides to able to toss the snowball right at us, and now we need to let this giant snowball break through those blocks, and that way you should able to do that. So, pretty clever way to able to actually handle these star coins like that, so... Yeah, because for the most part though, unlike something relates to, let's just say New Super Mario Bros. 2, and some occasional star coins in New Super Mario Bros. U sometimes, that, there are very simple to able to try to obtain them sometimes, so yeah, I get the sense of feeling about the forms of the lack of challenge in regards to the forms of the lack of satisfaction if you're trying to able to actually grab some star coins and some occasional moon coins in New Super Mario Bros. 2's case, but even then, still, I'm just a little bit, well, I have no idea why I say things like that for some right reason, but hey. Also, Mighty, you probably already do realize about the fact that one of those leaks is pretty much fake as it stands. Yeah, with the forms of that particular collection of New Super Mario Bros. Games into one package onto Nintendo Switch 2. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure that Maxi has already talked about that earlier, since in one of the boards in Super Mario Party Jam Parade, specifically Mario's Rainbow Castle, because, well, straight to the point, that obviously does about the fact that the box art that thanks to that leak, well, like I said before, it's pretty much fake as it stands, because, you know, it borrows the exact same barcode as not only New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, but also with the exact same release date, or specifically the year number, for the copyright thing from Nintendo from the likes of 2012 all the way up to 2018, which makes absolutely no sense in terms of the forms of that particular leak, because, you know, like what Maxi has already stated earlier, it is debunked straight off the bat, so... But still, we can able to actually expect to see the forms of the massive excitement in terms of the forms of that particular special event coming up. So, yeah, I think we already get the gist of it for this point right about now. So, oh yeah, I'm aware there's a secret exit in here somewhere, which I'm pretty sure before I'm able to actually try to find that, I need to grab the second star coin, which is not that far from here, which, straight to the point, I've already accomplished that. So, now I need to head back, but I need to activate the checkpoint first, in case if I don't screw this up. So, anyway, jeez, I was not expecting with that particular snowball decides able to ambush me, so, anyway, I need to head back up here, and rather than going on to the right, so I'm sure we need to go on to the left, thanks to the forms of the beanstalk, and hit into that pipe, and that way, I would find the secret exit, so much so. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah, especially noticeable considering about the fact that, well, although you do need to able to go for the entire stage again. Yeah, I already know about that, because at this point in time, yeah, you get the idea. But anyway, The next thing we want to point out is about the fact that remember when Maxie has already pointed out, for the sake of the phones that Disney Plus already did manage to confirm the actual release date for the sake of the phones of Lilo and Stitch live-action movie adaptation on the 3rd of September is coming onto Disney Plus. Well, straight to the point is about the fact that out of nowhere too, that the DVD version / Blu-ray and 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray of that live-action movie adaptation of Lilo and Stitch also confirms the release date, and it's gonna come out at some point in August, strangely enough, although it's gonna be coming out at some point on the 25th of August. That's roughly about 3 months after its release on the big screen on the cinema. So no matter what though, it's about the fact that at the very least we've already got Thunderbolts on DVD and Blu-ray and 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray, but still no luck on Disney Plus release for that. Well, if I can recall correctly, it might actually due out at some point in the midway portion of August for some time. I mean, chances are though is about the fact that it just takes time, in regards to the films are trying to release home media versions for some films in particular, and other times though about the fact that with Disney Plus release for that matter, I mean, again, it's a bit tricky to explain, because even then though, that I just really couldn't help it for myself about the films of, I can't even believe that, you know, the ultimate celebration for Super Mario Bros. Is almost fastly approaching, like it's just around the corner at this point. I mean, after all though, Ray, it's about the fact that after experiencing, let's just say not one, but 2 disappointing presentations in a row, for the sake of the films throughout the whole summer, but at the very least I'll give Pokemon Presents some credit for it. At the very least there are some exciting moments, for the sake of the films of not only Pokemon Legends EA, but in addition to Pokemon Champions as well. But apart from those side of things though, oh, in addition to that particular Pokepark Kanto attraction as far as I'm aware, in Japan that is, so yeah, because for the most part though, with while looking back on Ponder Showcase Direct and Indie World presentation, they are both incredibly lackluster, which I know for a fact that, well, we already on about for the fact that there's only, you know, 2 things or 3 things specifically we only excited for in Ponder Showcase, which is of course Pac-Man World 2 Repack and Dragon Ball Sparking Zero finally coming onto Switch 1 and Switch 2, and in addition to Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment as well, despite, you know, still no luck in terms of, you know, the release date, and in addition to more in-depth look for the sake of the films of how the gameplay plays out, despite it might actually play very similar to both Hyrule Warriors and Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. So yeah, I think I get the idea for that point, because it still is more accurately like a hack and slash kind of gameplay style that we pretty much already used to at this point. So, and it's even more crazy is about the fact that still that we now on the 3rd entry in terms of the forms of the Hyrule Warriors games, whilst unlike something relates to Fire Emblem, they only got 2 Fire Emblem Warriors games so far. Well, at least the new 3DS version doesn't count, mind you, because, well, at that point it's about the fact that no wonder why that anyone else always attempts able to want to get the Switch version instead of the new 3DS version, just because, well, not only for the fact that the new 3DS version does not have a 3D feature on Fire Emblem Warriors for some reason, and in addition to that though is about the fact that the Switch version is much more relevant compared to the forms of how it does on the 3DS handhelds, I'm pretty sure. So no matter what though, at that point in time for this point, Mighty, is about the fact that, you know, Nintendo Switch, along with Nintendo Switch 2, has now officially became a lot more popular, despite, you know, a very slow progression for the sake of the forms of, you know, how much units has been sold for Nintendo Switch 2, but still, it's doing rather well for Switch 2 so far. So, yeah, despite what the forms of some controversial opinions about, you know, the stupid game key cards was actually introduced for third-party supported titles, and in addition to the expensive price tag these days, especially noticeable in, you know, the physical version of Mario Kart World, for instance. So, yeah, I can totally get the idea what you're on about. So,
Anyway, so now let's move on to the final level in World 5, and now it's your turn, Ray, to do this, so...
But, before you're able to actually decide to end off the video, on the other hand, because, as far as I'm aware, once we do manage to able to complete World 5, instead of able to actually taking us into World 6, unlike the forms of how it does on the new Super Mario Bros. DS vanilla version, so instead, I get the feeling we might able to actually transport into World 7 instead.
So this means about the fact, you know what that particular final cannon level that we can able to actually now jump into, right?
Well, apparently though, in order to able to actually access to World 6, which, conveniently enough though, that particular World 6 in this ROM hack is very unique in that respect, which then again though, that particular topic can wait though, once I'm basically done with this stage, so... Oh jeez, I was not expecting with that Plottaboo Fireball decides to show up like nothing else, so... Oh jeez, ice physics. I can't stand ice physics sometimes. Oh no! I was not expecting with that moving platforms. But oh well, no big deal. But still, I got the checkpoint, so I don't have to worry about it too much.
Although nowadays though in World 5, all the way up to the final world, I'm pretty sure that we can now need to able to try to deal with those Hammer Bros, and in that way we can able to get something rewarding if you do manage to able to taking care of the forms of those Hammer Bros for sure. So yeah, just like the forms of how it does on the vanilla version of New Super Mario Bros. DS basically, so yeah. I suppose the final thing I want to discuss upon actually, and that's what appears to be for the fact that, well, imagine this, right? If the PS4 version, physical version of Pac-Man World 2 repack will never become existence, well, suffice to say though, we might have no choice but to able to try to go for the digital version on the PS4 version of Pac-Man World 2 repack at some point, just because, well, we just really couldn't help it for ourselves about the forms of how much enjoyment we have for the majority of the Pac-Man World games, basically, except on the Game Boy Advance games, because, well, you know, you get the idea for the fact that Pac-Man has been suffered a lot after experiencing playing through not only Pac-Man World on the Game Boy Advance, but also with Pac-Man World 2 on the Game Boy Advance as well, because of the, you know, depth perception problems, so... Anyway, so it's now to take on the falls of the next boss, which is obviously inspired by World 2 fight, which appears to be this time around is like a snowy version of Mummy Pokey, which, yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you, Mighty, this fight is definitely a little bit tricky to me, because there are, I swear, I was able to try to land on him on top of his head, but most of the time that was about the fact I just keep on missing him sometimes. But luckily though, no need for mini mushrooms anymore, which thank goodness for that, because that again though is a bit of a painful process if you really want to access to World 4 in the vanilla version of New Super Mario Bros. On the DS basically.
Yeah, that might be seems a little bit of a problematic, so... Anyway, World 5 is completely done. And like I said before, instead of going on to World 6, we now ended up in World 7 instead. So, if you're probably wondering, how are you able to actually access to World 6, you're probably wondering? Well, we need to head back into World 5, which obviously though for the fact that as you can tell, that I might get the feeling out though actually, is that between both World 6 and World 8 especially, I might have the feeling that rather than just trying to able to actually go through 2 towers this time, which that particular discussion can wait until tomorrow. So either way, you see that cannon level right there? Well, obviously though, we need to able to go into this particular cannon right there in World 5, and by the way, I'll be in charge with that particular cannon, mind you. So, yeah, because in order able to get to World 6, we need to go into this cannon, because as you can see on screen, that it does manage to take us in World 6. So, we're very curious to know what the theme is going to be exactly for World 6 in this ROM hack. So, let's blast all the way up to the Crescent Moon.
Conveniently enough though, it reminds me of so much of Chapter 7 from Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, so...
And look at that, we now ended up in a space-themed world, in World 6 nonetheless. So, pretty interesting right there. So, suffice to say though, it is actually called Lunar Realm. Kind of an interesting world name right there.
Yeah, which suffice to say for this point, guys, is that we might as well end things off this point right here.
So join us next time for some more of Let's Play of newer Super Mario Bros. DS that basically though we can able to actually start able to explore into World 6 called, as I said this before, Lunar Realm, which does manage to take place into outer space. So this will be fun.
So we'll see you guys until tomorrow.